Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network on Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin. Thank you for joining me every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. So glad you could join me and join J&J Media on a lovely Monday morning. A lot to get into today, and most importantly, a historical Malkin's moments coming up at the end of the show. This is going to be my best Malkin's moments ever, so you're not going to want to miss that. Again, Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network. I've talked a lot about stars playing well, the importance of your best players showing up in the biggest games of the season. I don't know how many more superlatives I can praise Patrick Mahomes with, that I can confer onto him. He was simply unbelievable yesterday. Chiefs beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 27-24, and this game was a lot closer on the score line than in reality. This was not as close of a game as the score seemed to indicate. Yes, it came down to Patrick Mahomes having to secure a couple first downs, one with his legs and then one with a pass to Tyreek Hill. But this game was not nearly as close as it appeared to be. And he goes 37 of 49, 462 yards, 3 touchdowns, QBR of 91, 75.5% completion percentage. Completed 360 passes in the first half, which was the most by a quarterback in the past 20 years in the NFL. This was an unbelievable performance, and not to mention, so he finishes Mahomes with 462 yards. He should have had an 89-yard touchdown pass to Mecole Hardman. In the third quarter, Chiefs are up 27-10 at their own 11-yard line. And Mahomes hits Mecole Hardman wide open, all alone in the secondary. The safety was helping to double Tyreek Hill on the opposite side of the field. And if he just makes the catch and he turns upfield, that's 89 yards to the house. The only player who could catch Mecole Hardman is his own teammate in Tyreek Hill. That wasn't going to happen. And the reality is this is the 5th career 400-plus yard game for Patrick Mahomes, which matches the total for all other Chiefs quarterbacks in their 61-year history. In their 61-year history, he matches that total. And not only that, but his 462 yards wasn't even the most of his career. It was his second career best. The best of his career came in that epic offensive showdown versus the Rams on a Monday Night Football game 2 years ago that the Rams ended up winning 54-51. Mahomes passed for 479 yards in that game, and they lost. But this is not hyperbole when I say that we are watching and we are witnessing the greatest quarterback to ever play the game right now. When it's all said and done, Patrick Mahomes will be the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. We could identify early on that Mozart was going to be perhaps the greatest composer of music we'd ever seen. He composed his first piece of music, Mozart, in 1761 at the age of 5. By age 6, he had performed in front of 2 imperial courts. It didn't take us long to realize after The Deer Hunter that Meryl Streep would be one of the best, if not the greatest actor of all time. It's easy to identify greatness early on in their careers. Michael Jordan, we could tell in his first playoff game against the Celtics, dropped 63. Larry Bird said he's Jesus on sneakers, LeBron, Kobe, Tiger Woods in golf, Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal, Serena Williams. You could tell early on these athletes are just different. They're just different. And Mahomes now has shown that he just has this innate ability, unlike anyone else, to throw the football. I know that Aaron Rodgers can probably throw the football similarly, if not the same level, but you combine the youth with the maturity, the accuracy, the arm, the athleticism, he's got it all. He's got it all. And through his first 41 starts, because he started 41 games, he's tied for third most in wins, has the most passing yards in NFL history through a quarterback's first 41 games, most games with 4+ touchdowns in a game, and the highest passer rating in NFL history through someone's first 41 starts. Again, it became apparent quickly after Love Me Do that the Beatles were going to be perhaps the greatest band ever assembled. You can identify in the early onset in someone's career how special they're going to be. Tom Brady is the anomaly. We view him as the GOAT, but not based on talent, based on achievements and his ability to overcome being drafted in the 6th round, his clutchness down the stretch, his 6 Super Bowls in his 6 Super Bowl victories in 9 tries. But when you're looking at innate talent, there are really only a few guys that can even compare with this one. And Mahomes now, I think, is further fortifying his MVP case. He's thrown now for nearly 3,500 yards, 3,497 yards, 30 touchdowns, second most in the NFL. Only 2 interceptions, still leads the NFL in QBR with over 86, second in passer rating. This guy's already won an MVP. He's won a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP. This is his 3rd year as a starter, 4th year in the NFL. And then you combine that with his Ferrari that he's got lined up, who's disguised as a 5'10 wide receiver, in Tyreek Hill, who's having his career year. Tyreek Hill leads the NFL with over 1,200 receiving yards and 13 receiving touchdowns. He had 203 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, Tyreek Hill. And again, he only was drafted 1 year before Mahomes. He came only 1 year before Mahomes in 2016. Mahomes was drafted in 2017. Now, I'm not saying that Tyreek Hill is the best wide receiver in the NFL. I'm not going to go that far. Here's what I can say. If you look at the great wide receivers right now in the NFL, I don't think any wide receiver's career image and perception has been elevated because of their quarterback more than Tyreek Hill. You take the Michael Thomases of the world, you take the Julio Jones, the Odell Beckham Jr.'s, the DeAndre Hopkins, the Devontae Adams of the world. I think that those guys are such elite talents at the wide receiver position that they would thrive with anyone. Now, I'm not saying that to diminish their quarterbacks, because there's no question that it's a two-way street and you need a talented quarterback to make you look good. But if you look at their innate skills as wide receivers, they would be viewed in the same light regardless of their situation. But Tyreek Hill, prior to Mahomes' arrival, people didn't look at Tyreek Hill as an elite wide receiver. They looked at him as a speedster with elite speed and running ability who could also catch passes. Now we're starting to view Tyreek Hill in a different light. The narrative surrounding him has altered, has changed. If you look at his best season was with Patrick Mahomes in his first year as a starter. caught passes for over 1,400 yards. That was Mahomes' MVP season. But he's on pace right now to eclipse that mark easily. So the Chiefs now 10-1 on the season. They trail the Pittsburgh Steelers by half a game. We're 10-0. The Steelers play the Ravens on a big Tuesday night game. The game was initially slated for Thanksgiving, got postponed due to too many positive COVID tests. But that's going to be a difficult game for the Steelers. I don't necessarily know. If they beat the Ravens, I still won't have them as the number one team. I still believe the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL by far. It'll keep the Steelers at number two. And I know people want to see this matchup in, I think, about 10 weeks, which is when the Super Bowl would take place, back on that same field in Tampa Bay between these two teams. And there's no question that it would be storylines galore. But I'm not even sure if Tampa Bay will be able to reach the NFC Championship game. First of all, they got to make the playoffs first, which isn't a lock right now. It is not a lock by any means. But I don't even know if they're going to make the NFC Championship game, let alone the Super Bowl. So Mahomes does it again. And speaking of talented guys, perhaps the only other talented guy that can actually match the kind of production and skill that Patrick Mahomes possesses is Aaron Rodgers. He was special yesterday, wasn't he? 97 QBR, 21 of 29, 211 yards passing, 4 touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers. He's now surpassed 50,000 passing yards, becoming just the 11th quarterback in NFL history to reach that milestone. Aaron Rodgers was spectacular. Not to mention the Packers got their 100th win over the Chicago Bears. They lead the all-time series 195-6, including a 20-5 mark for Aaron Rodgers as the starting quarterback. And listen, Aaron Rodgers now is also firmly in the MVP discussion. They're top the Packers are top the NFC North. They're 8-3, second best record in the NFC. Aaron Rodgers, 3,100 passing yards this year, leads the NFL in touchdown passes with 33, just 4 interceptions. Second in QBR at 85, first in the league in passer rating, 117.5. Aaron Rodgers is having a tremendous season, and this is the important stat here about the Packers that I think gets overlooked so frequently. Their offensive line does a great job protecting Aaron Rodgers in the pocket. In 10 of the 11 games that Aaron Rodgers has played, he's been sacked 0 or 1 time. Think about that. In 11 games, Aaron Rodgers has been sacked 0 or 1 time. That's what you need to do when you have a franchise quarterback. That's what you need to do to protect your cornerstone piece. Just ask Deshaun Watson what it's like to play with a porous offensive line. He's scrambling for his life all the time. Credit to Russell Wilson, who doesn't have the best offensive line, but is still athletic enough and in his prime where he can scramble and avoid pressure and avoid sacks. And even he's been sacked a number of times. There's a reason why when you're building a team from scratch, you first draft the quarterback, then you draft a left tackle and a right tackle to block and protect your quarterback. Once you've got that figured out, then you can fill out the rest. But the reality is that this team, but the important takeaway was this. We've known about this team's offense They've always had an explosive offense. Devontae Adams caught a touchdown pass for the 6th straight game. Yippee. We know what they do on offense. The important takeaway here is that their defense appears to be more opportunistic than we think. Now, again, I understand that they weren't exactly playing an offensive juggernaut in the Chicago Bears. I'm not naive or ignorant enough to not notice that, to not see that. Okay, they're playing against a quarterback in Mitchell Trubisky who was benched midway through week 3 against the Lions. Okay, I understand they weren't playing the most explosive offensive team, but what I wanted to see was, could you take advantage of a situation like that? Could their defense come up with stops and create turnovers? And the reality is they created 3 turnovers. 2 picks by Darnell Savage and a forced fumble by Zadarius Smith, and it was returned and ran into the end zone by Preston Smith. Then you got Jair Alexander. Again, I'm not saying that this defense is elite, but they have to be opportunistic for this team moving forward to have some success. And at least this game showed some promise. You can see that there's a lot of potential energy that is stored right now in this team. It's a matter of, can they just exert that? That's the question mark. With the Green Bay Packers, it's been the same question year in and year out. And the Packers are one of the best, if not the best, home teams in the NFL, especially in the playoffs. That is the big key. They are a substantially better and completely different team at home at Lambeau Field than they are on the road. It's staggeringly different. There is a stark contrast between how this team plays on the road versus how they play at home. And the reality is this: you look at this team over the last 2 regular seasons, including this past season. In 2 seasons, this season and last season, the Packers have lost just 1 home game in each of these past 2 seasons. They lost their first game to the Minnesota Vikings at home. That was the only loss this year. They lost 1 time at home to the Philadelphia Eagles last year. But Aaron Rodgers is a different quarterback at home than he is on the road. And since Aaron Rodgers has been the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers since 2008 in the playoffs, Rodgers is 4-2, and the Packers are 4-2 at home, and they're 2-7 on the road. That tells you everything you need to know. Which is why that win over the Saints earlier on in the season could pay huge dividends now. And it carries so much more significant weight behind it now than it did before. Because now the Packers have that head-to-head tiebreaker. Packers are 8-3. The Saints are 9-2. Not to mention, yesterday was the first time that the Packers started to experiment letting some fans into Lambeau Field. Now, it was primarily the fans of employees and team personnel, just to see how their COVID protocols would work in the event that they decide to let more fans in come the end of the season, or maybe even the postseason. But you look at the schedule for the Saints, who are 9-2 right now, and look who they have left. They've got at the Falcons without Drew Brees, who, yes, they beat them badly in New Orleans. The Falcons just put a licking on the Las Vegas Raiders, 43-6 at home. And again, without Drew Brees, an in-division rival on the road, that's not a guarantee you're going to win that game. At the Eagles, again, the Philadelphia Eagles aren't good, but it is a road game, and you're probably without Drew Brees. Then you come home to face the Kansas City Chiefs, who surprisingly are a better team on the road than they are at home this year. They have the largest margin of victory on the road for any team. They beat teams by over 10 points a game on the road. So you face them at home. Maybe you get Drew Brees back. Then you play the Minnesota Vikings at home, a team that beat you last year in your building. And then at the Panthers, which isn't a cakewalk. Now, I think that the Saints will close out and finish the season 4-1. I think that the only one of those games that they'll likely lose to is the Chiefs. But I could totally see them going 3-2. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they can go 3-2. And then you look at the Packers' schedule, and it seems a little bit more favorable. They've got versus the Eagles, which I think is a win, at the Lions, versus the Panthers, could be a little testy, versus the Titans is the one key difficult matchup remaining. But again, that's at home, and this team plays substantially better at home. And then at the Bears, and the Bears are a dumpster fire right now. They've lost 5 straight games. So I think that the Packers will likely go 4-1 in that stretch, but it's totally conceivable that they could go 5-0. And again, all they need is to have the same record as the Saints to overtake them atop the NFC with their head-to-head win. So by winning, this continues to put the onus on the Saints and keeps that gap margin razor thin. So big win for the Packers to just keep pace with the Saints, most importantly. Keep pace with them, keep that pressure on with them. Morning, Joe. Right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Hashtag Morning Joe, hashtag JMall. Comment your favorite coffee, barista, and I'll give you a shout out right here on Morning Joe. So we saw this last year from the Tennessee Titans. How come November time, this team took on a new persona, took on a new facade. And they started to round into form. And we're starting to see the same thing happen this year. They demolished the Colts 45-26 yesterday. But they're starting to round into form, especially with their run game. Derrick Henry was a monster once again. 27 carries, 178 yards, 3 touchdowns, rushed for 140 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half. He's rushed now 3 straight games, back-to-back games with over 100 yards. He's rushed for over 100 yards in 4 out of his last 5 games. But 103 against the Colts 3 weeks ago, 103 against the Colts 3 weeks ago, 133 against the Baltimore Ravens, and then 178 yesterday. This man is playing and is running the football like a man possessed. So he's rushed now, leads the NFL, 1,257 rushing yards, most in the NFL, most attacks per game, 12 rushing touchdowns, which is second most in the NFL. But this was the same time last year that we saw Derrick Henry start to ramp up his production and rev up for the postseason. Last year, from November 8th through December 10th, okay, Derrick Henry rushed for over 100 yards in each of those 4 games. I just said this year, he's rushed. The Titans have played 5 games in the month of November. Derrick Henry's rushed for over 100 yards in 4 out of those 5 games. Last year, again, as I just said, November 8th through December 10th. I think it actually might have been flopped. November 10th through December 8th, Derrick Henry in 4 games rushed for over 100 yards in each of those games. So they're starting to turn a corner and display the type of skill and style that was so dominant and worked for them so effectively last year. They're starting to exert their influence over teams again. And the same thing can be said for Ryan Tannehill. He is starting to round into shape and turn into form. And we saw this last year. In fact, now Ryan Tannehill has thrown for back-to-back games of over an 80 QBR. He had an 87.7 QBR yesterday, an 80 QBR against the Baltimore Ravens. And it was November 24th last year when Ryan Tannehill began playing on that tear. His final 6 games of the regular season last year for Ryan Tannehill, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, with 2 games of a 93 or better QBR. I've spoken ad nauseum about the importance of self-identity. Who are you at your core? If you strip the Tennessee Titans down to their core, down to their most granular, rudimentary level, this is a power-running football team led by Derrick Henry that utilizes play action for Ryan Tannehill to complete easy and convert easy third down throws. That's their bread and butter. That's their core. That's their identity. They have a complete understanding of that, which is why they've been so effective come these later months. Their physicality, most teams can't match that. And that's why this team is going to be a difficult out once again come the postseason, because there just aren't too many teams that can match up defensively to stop the run game, to stop that power run game. And then again, when the power run game is so effective, you utilize that play action, and Ryan Tannehill can make you pay. Through the first 10 weeks, the Tennessee Titans were one of the best teams on third down, and they're still a top 10 team on third down conversion. They complete over 50% of their third down passes because of that play action that's set up by Derrick Henry. Now, if you're the Colts, I don't glean too much from the Indianapolis Colts. I know that people were probably overreacting to me placing the Indianapolis Colts at number 5 in my top 5 last week. But if you looked at their body of work last week, it was pretty justified. They had beaten the Titans already. That was the only matchup they had played. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They beat the Green Bay Packers. Right? So the reality is, at the time, I stand by that pick. Obviously, the Tennessee Titans are a better team right now. But the thing is, the Colts didn't have their starting running back in Jonathan Taylor. Their wide receiver, Paris Campbell, was out. So the only thing that happened was they got a little bit more exposed. And again, when Phillip Rivers plays like dog expletive, they're going to lose the game. He was 24-42. Why is Phillip Rivers throwing the football 42 times? It's because they couldn't run the football yesterday. Why couldn't they run the football yesterday? Because they were without their starting running back, Jonathan Taylor. So this is more about the Tennessee Titans than the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts were just missing a couple key pieces on offense. And again, the Titans do what they do best. They control time of possession. They ran the ball down your throat 27 times with Derrick Henry, 178 rushing yards, and they won the football game. And now the Titans are 8-3, atop the AFC South. They lead that division. There's still time for both teams. And again, I still think that the Colts will make the playoffs as well. But this was about the Tennessee Titans resorting back to who they are and who they've been the past 2 seasons. That has really shifted the narrative of the epitome of an average 8-8 team to a team that's been able to take the next step and improve to 10-6, to improve to 11-5, and be a playoff team. And right now at 8-3, they could finish 12-4. So impressive win for the Tennessee Titans. And I want to shift gears now closer to home, the San Francisco 49ers and the LA Rams. So Robbie Gould hits the game-winning 47-yard field goal to win at SoFi Stadium for the 49ers 23-20 over the Rams. So now, in the last two seasons, the 49ers are 4-0 against the Rams. Kyle Shanahan, as the coach of the 49ers, has bested Sean McVay 4 straight times over the past 2 seasons. He's 4-0 as the head coach of the 49ers versus Sean McVay as the head coach of the Rams. It was honestly miraculous to me that the Rams were even in this game. They'd committed 4 turnovers. Jared Goff, once again, was awful. He had a 10 QBR, Jared Goff. 19 of 31, 198 yards, 2 interceptions. This is the problem. This is the one hindrance for the Rams. It's the one inhibitor that could throw a wrench in the entire Super Bowl potential run. It's Jared Goff and his turnovers. Now, listen, he has still thrown for over 3,000 yards, 3,021 yards, which is top 7 in the NFL. But this is the glaring stat. 16 touchdowns to 15 turnovers, 10 interceptions, 5 lost fumbles, and he's lost a couple more fumbles than that. Or rather, he's fumbled it a couple more times than that. He's lost 5. So his touchdown interception ratio is awful. 16 touchdowns to 10 interceptions and 5 lost fumbles. He's got to hold on to the football. That's the only reason the Rams keep losing to the 49ers and have lost this year, because when you look at this team all season, the only aberration was the loss to the Dolphins. Not only did they turn the ball over 4 times, that was the one game this year that the Rams just couldn't string together anything good. It was an early Sunday morning game on the East Coast. They had just flown thousands of miles across country, and they just weren't ready. And the Dolphins were starting Tua for the first time, and everything came together for an absolute Sunday early afternoon nightmare for the Rams. That was the only aberration. The game that they lost to the Bills, they should have won that game if it wasn't for a bogus 4th and long pass interference call with minimal contact. Not to mention it would have been a historical comeback for the Rams that just got negated. And then the only 2 other losses are to the 49ers. They lost by a touchdown the first go-around, and they lost by 3 this go-around. Since Shanahan, this is the most eye-popping statistic. Since Kyle Shanahan has taken over as the head coach of the 49ers, against the Rams, Jared Goff, as the starting quarterback for the Rams, against Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. So not only is he 0-4 as a starter, he's completing 56% of his passes, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 2 lost fumbles, and has had an average in 4 games of a QBR of 29.6 on a scale of 0 to 100. Against all other teams in the past 2 seasons, Jared Goff's completing over 66% of his passes in the same 2-year time span. Think about that. One team, you play them 4 times. You complete 56% of your passes, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 2 lost fumbles. Average QBR of 29.6. Against all other teams, you're completing 66% of your passes. Sometimes teams just have your number. That's the reality. Sometimes teams just have your number. And the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan just have Sean McVay's number. It's as simple as that. And again, excluding the aberration against the Dolphins and excluding the 2 losses to the 49ers, the Rams really don't lose. They've looked good in every game. They should have beaten Buffalo, despite having to come from that historic comeback. But this further illustrates the depth in the NFC West, how arduous it is. The 49ers, despite a depleted roster ravaged by injuries, they're 5-6. Just imagine where they would be if they were healthy. What the NFC West would look like right now, what the entire landscape of the NFC and the NFL would look like if they were healthy. And a lot of that's a testament to the tremendous coaching job of Kyle Shanahan. But again, if the Rams have any chance of making the Super Bowl and making a Super Bowl run, which their defense has demonstrated that they are. The defense is Super Bowl caliber level. Their wide receivers are elite. Despite a fumble from Malcolm Brown, I think that their 3-headed monster at the running back position is talented enough to make a Super Bowl run. If they want to have a chance at making the Super Bowl, Jared Goff cannot turn the ball over. It's as simple as that. And unfortunately, I know it's a cliche that can be said about a bevy of other teams with their quarterbacks, but it really rings home for the Rams and Jared Goff. That's the reality. Final topic of the day before I get to my Malkin's moments. This has been a year of the firsts. This has been a year of the first. We're living through a pandemic right now. We're experiencing the most fatal, pervasive pandemic that we've ever experienced in the modern era. Our economy is shattered. It's upended our society. Lives have been lost, and America has been trying to rebound. The entire world, millions of people have been infected with this deadly virus. This is the first year that we've had the largest voter turnout ever. The NBA had to form a bubble to contain COVID at the ESPN Worldwide Sports Complex in Orlando, Florida. The MLB created bubble-like hubs in different cities to execute their postseason and claim and crown a champion. This is the year of the firsts. And I'm telling you right now, this will be the first year ever that a non-Power 5 college football program will make the college football playoff. I'm telling you right now. Can't predict yet if it will be Cincinnati or BYU. Which one specifically? Cincinnati sure looks like they've got a better chance, but this will be the first year that a non-Power 5 college football program will make the college football playoff. Let's break this down, because this weekend revealed a lot to us, and tomorrow is going to reveal a lot to us regarding the college football playoff rankings. By Oregon losing yesterday, the Pac-12 was ostensibly eliminated from the college football playoff. I understand that USC is still undefeated and they're ranked, but they do not have the schedule and the resume to make it. Oregon was the best chance for the Pac-12. USC's got wins, barely wins over Arizona State, Arizona, and Utah. They were idle this week against Colorado because of too many positive tests for COVID. And all they've got remaining is Washington State and UCLA. So the Pac-12 is ostensibly eliminated. I just don't see a way that they're going to take an undefeated USC team that wasn't even regarded in the beginning of the year as the best team in their conference, that has played a limited number of games, only 3 so far, will have played 5 if they can finish out the regular season 6 with a Pac-12 championship game. That will not have the resume. Then you switch now to the Big Ten. Northwestern was ranked number 8. Now they lost. They're out of contention. So the onus shifts to Ohio State. They have to remain undefeated for the Big Ten to have a representative. If Ohio State doesn't go undefeated the rest of the way, the Big Ten will not have a team represent its conference. Indiana, who is technically ranked ahead of BYU right now, their starting quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., it was just announced this morning that he will likely be done for the season with a lower leg injury. Not to mention Indiana plays at Wisconsin this week. Will likely lose that game. That negates Indiana's chances, even though they really didn't have a chance since they already lost to Ohio State. Wisconsin lost to Northwestern last week and has missed so many games that they were ineligible to play in the Big Ten championship game anyway. So now the Big Ten's hopes lie solely on Ohio State. One slip up from the Buckeyes and it's done for the Big Ten. So the Pac-12 is done. The Big Ten is hanging on by a thread with their blue blood program in Ohio State. Now you shift to the ACC. Notre Dame and Clemson will both likely get in. But Notre Dame's already beaten Clemson. And with this win over a ranked North Carolina team on the road, even if Notre Dame loses to Clemson in the ACC championship game, those two teams will, without a shadow of a doubt, both make the college football playoff. But if Notre Dame is truly the second best team in the nation, what if they beat Clemson in the ACC championship game? Now that's 2 losses for a Clemson team. I don't know if Clemson would get in with 2 losses. I don't think they would. That could open the door. And now you look at the SEC, Alabama is a shoo-in to make it. 1 loss or 2. Undefeated or probably 1 loss to a Florida team. But let's just say that Alabama wins out. They beat Florida in the SEC championship game. Now Florida's got 2 losses. Now, I'm not saying it's not conceivable that a 2-loss SEC team could still make it or a 2-loss team could make it. I don't see the committee having the stones this year to insert a 2-loss Florida team ahead of an undefeated Cincinnati or an undefeated BYU. Not for 2 losses. Texas A&M, by the way, they have to travel to Auburn this week. Jordan-Hare is a difficult place to play. They could lose that game. They wrap up the season at Tennessee. I like Jeremy Pruitt as a head coach. I think that Tennessee could beat them potentially. So it's not a lock that Texas A&M could lose. Florida might lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game. That would be 2 losses. So you're looking at a Cincinnati team right now where they've got 1 game left on their schedule. BYU is done. What if Cincinnati and BYU are able to schedule quickly, put together a game between the 2 of them? This is going to be the year, because a game like that would solidify one of those 2 teams, I believe. And again, now you've got Indiana likely done. They were ranked ahead of BYU. They're out of the picture. Georgia's got 2 losses. At the end of the day, even though they're ranked a little higher right now, I don't see Georgia getting in with 2 losses over those 2 teams. I think the Big 12 is done. Oklahoma, I really don't see them getting in even with 2 losses, even the way that everything's shaking out. I'm not a firm believer in Miami. I just am not. So this is going to be the year. The hurdles that the non-Power 5 programs have had to jump through, the obstacles they've had to overcome and circumvent in years past, will not be the same this year. This year will be different. And I'm telling you right now, this has been the year of the first. This has been an unprecedented year for sports and our entire society. And this will be the year especially with the small sample size, that a non-Power 5 school will make it to the college football playoff. That will happen this year. Final topic. This is a historical moment on Morning Joe, a historical moment in sports, which is why it has made it onto my Malkin's moments. I've got 2 Malkin's moments, both featuring women that have shattered sports stereotypes and paradigms for years. This is a breakthrough moment for women in sports. Vanderbilt's kicker, Sarah Fuller, kicked off the second half of Vanderbilt's football game versus Missouri to become the first female athlete to ever participate for a Power 5 football team. Just a tremendous story. First woman to play in a Power 5 college football game. And apparently she spoke at halftime really disappointed that she was pretty upset and pissed off at how quiet everybody was on the sidelines through the ups and the downs. And again, she's the one player on that team in that locker room that has championship experience. She won an SEC championship with the Commodores women's soccer team. So she's a soccer player, gets brought on to be the kickoff woman for the Vanderbilt Commodores. She became the third woman to appear in an FBS football game after New Mexico's Katie Hinda did it in 2003, and Kent State's April Goss did it in 2015. So that was my first Malkin's moment, which was tremendous. And along those same lines, the Cleveland Browns coach Kaylee Brownson became the first woman to coach an NFL position group in the regular season, as she filled in to be the tight ends coach. We hadn't seen that yet. There are a couple of other up-and-coming NFL women coaches that are rising through the ranks, but this has been a tremendous year for women in sports. And I just love this story with Sarah Fuller. And you saw, if you watched the video, the joy that overflowed from her. Her family was all watching the game. They were in attendance. And it's interesting that when you've got a woman in Sarah Fuller who's calling out the team at halftime to be more vocal, to demonstrate more support for your team, which apparently was a sentiment that was shared across all the coaching staff before their head coach was just fired yesterday. So tremendous Malkin's moment, a historic moment on the show, and a historic moment for women in sports in general. That's all the time I got. Thank you so much for joining me on Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, on Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for making me and Morning Joe a part of your Monday morning plans. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.